today's talk is on mental illness, the world of mental illness. Mike Jaqua is presenting. And Mike, I'm gonna let you take it over. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and background.
Okay.
You've been leading all your life, so you're an expert.
Yeah. I'm an expert on a little bit of everything. Actually, that's wrong. I think I'm an expert on everything. Then I learn about it and realize. So.
When did they discover that? Yeah.
Anyway, so me, spent most of my career as a biologist, mostly in research and also then in educational writing for a decade or so. Kind of had to learn a broad swath of the world of biology and biomedicine in order to do all the writing and do different projects. So that's why I know all about it. Yeah. We talk about mental illness today. I'll go through this, by the way. Normally when I do a presentation, I can sort of get what I want, put the slides together and kind of get it to go. This one I started out with about 100 slides when I had everything I wanted to talk about. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have to pare that down. And this one just didn't want to be written. So if there's some roughness in it, hey, come in. If there's some roughness in it or something, it's because it was such a squirrely piece to do.
Too much to do in 2 hours.
Yeah, not like the old days when I would just write everything in a day. So here we go. World of mental illness. Let's see. Yes, there we go. So the first thing with any kind of illness is you have to know what's healthy, so that if you're trying to treat it, that's a target to get back to. So, mental health. It refers to our emotional and social well-being, the way we interact with people, trying to be normal through the day. So, and it impacts how we think, how we feel about things, and how we behave, hopefully in healthy fashions. Behave, sorry, I forgot about those. So, plays roles in how we connect with other people, how we make decisions in our lives, how we handle stress, and just about every other thing in daily life. So, see, it's the foundation for our emotions, thinking, communication, how we learn. It's also the foundation for resilience to anything that happens in your life. And self-esteem. Mental health will, help you not think too badly of yourself, hopefully. So, and also the keys to relationships, your own personal well-being, and how we contribute to society in general. I don't know why that was backwards. So now we go to what mental illness is. So that refers to health conditions, important set of words I should have underlined, that involve changes in your emotions from what they might normally be with a healthy mental state. Changes in your thinking, your behavior, or any combination of these compared to normal, healthy, balanced ways of thinking. So that affects your ability, particularly, I gotta go backwards on that one, particularly it messes up your ability to discriminate between healthy or unhealthy thoughts or actions. Depression, healthy thinking, things are okay, I'm okay. Unhealthy thinking, things are okay and I'm okay, but I feel like they're really, really, really not. So, and you can't distinguish between those two if you have clinical depression or some other things. It also affects your ability to discriminate between reality and perception. Reality may be that we're just all sitting like this, but if you're perhaps a schizophrenic, I might also think that somebody's talking to me while we're doing this. My perception is not reality. And then it's associated with distress, with problems with your social interactions, problems at work, problems dealing with family activities, basically any aspect of life. It affects how you deal with them. And again, not being able to think between healthy and unhealthy, reality and your perceptions. If that's messed up, you're not going to deal with distress, you won't have the resilience that I talked about with health. Your social interactions, again, mental health affects how those work. If you have mental illness, it's hard for you to interact with mentally healthy people in ways that don't kind of make them feel strange. You know, same with work, it definitely can affect your work. Family activities, lots of people with mental health problems wind up with family kind of wondering what the hell's going on. And I'm going to talk a little about how common they are. Amazingly, more than 20% of adults just walking around will have a temporary or a long-term illness in any given year. Again, those illnesses can be temporary, they can be long-lasting. If you're lucky, you get a temporary one. Most of them are actually long-lasting. And you can have more than one mental health problem at the same time. So you can have ADHD with bipolar disorder or any other combination of things. And the more of them that get piled on top of you, the harder it is to figure out how to react or act properly. So this group, schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and autism, those together are one of the leading causes of disability, inability to function properly, and a little more disturbing, they're the leading cause of suicide. I looked this up and it's like 85% of suicides are due to some sort of mental illness.
Wow.
It's phenomenal, it's stunning. But if you can't figure out reality versus your perceptions, and you think life is shitty, or you're paranoid, it's really easy to decide that, you know, I'm tired of this, I want it to go away, or I don't want to fight it anymore. Again, with how common they are, in any given year, 5.5% of adults, nearly 1 in 20, they'll have a long-term mental illness. And it's more common in young people. Between 18 and 25, the prevalence is twice as much as just the general group. And then each year, 23% of them will experience some form of mental illness, at least temporarily, so almost 1 in 4. And again, young people are the ones that wind up with it being most prevalent. It's all funny, I always thought it would happen later in life, but nope, it usually comes early. About getting treatment for it. Every year, 47.2% of adults with mental illness don't get any kind of treatment for it. Nearly half, which I think is crazy. 22.7 million people in the United States of America in any year are dealing with mental illness that they're fighting a mental illness, but they're not getting treated, trying to make it go away or find a healthy way to deal with it. Getting treatment for it, 24.7 adults with mental illness report that they tried to get care, but they couldn't. You see, could not get care, could get treatment. Most could get treatment, but you know, a quarter of them couldn't. That's 12 million people who tried to get treatment and they just couldn't. Has something to do with the American health system. So mental illness, it'll begin at any age, but most cases are early in life. Much to my surprise, half of them begin by age 14. It's insane. All right, bad choice of word. It's, you know, it's amazing.
It's a good choice of words.
And then 25% more of them are done by age 24. So you're only left with 25% who develop mental illnesses after their mid-20s. And again, I really thought that it was later in life until I started learning about it. I was astounded with this. This is part of the reason why teen suicide can be such a big problem. Here's the thing, it doesn't discriminate, it doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care what you are, it'll affect you regardless of age, sex, geography, family background, any other aspects of your life and identity. It literally hits everybody. Let's talk a bit about risk factors. It's just a laundry list and then some. So factors that may help it, history of mental illness in your family. And that is pretty strong correlation. Stressful life situations can give you, can cause you to have one of those temporary mental illnesses, or sometimes it can trigger a longer term one. So financial problems, death, divorce. If anybody's been through those, you know that you've seen people really have trouble with life when they have ongoing chronic medical conditions. That's really hard to fight through, and people often just get depressed or whatever, give up. Brain damage seems like a more obvious one, like traumatic brain injury. Traumatic experiences, assault, military combat, those are really obvious ones that we would all think of. Alcohol and drugs can definitely lead, at the very least, to dependence, but to a lot of other things. Childhood abuse and neglect seems obvious. Not having very many friends or healthy relationships. You get isolated, that'll change the way you feel about yourself heavily. And then if you've already got one, it increases your chances of getting another. So, not particularly encouraging if you got one, but yeah, it does. And if you've got one, it can get more serious as time goes on. Kind of like most other illnesses. We're going to talk a little bit about the causes. Before I get into it, I'm going to kind of talk about where the different regions of the brain are and what they do. There's only a couple of them in here that are going to be really important. So that part, kind of midbrain, see integration of experiences in life and such. That, the frontal lobe, which is kind of in the higher cortex of the brain, that's where your executive functions, your impulse control, your decisions about what to do based on what's coming at you. That's what that does the most. And this one over here and on the side and part of the cortex, your ability to sense your environment and respond to it. That one also mostly in the cortex for decoding basically sensory input. This one, visual processing, kind of towards the back of the head. Here's the other really important one, modulation of emotions, learning, and memory. That and the frontal lobe are the two that really show up a lot in how mental illnesses arise. And once you notice one thing, if you're looking at the sagittal view at the top, the limbic area or the limbic lobe is down low in the brain, closer to the stem. Those are kind of like what we think of as more primitive functions, whereas the executive functions are up in the red there, up in the cerebral cortex, the more higher function thing that lets us humans have language, develop things. So let's look at what they're caused by. This is really an important concept in there because a lot of people have a misconception What they're caused by is changes in the neural networks in your brain. Neural networks are things like, if you learn about biology, that gives me a certain set of networks, whereas if you're doing computing, that gives you a certain set of networks that go between your learning centers, your processing centers. That's just one example of the way you can develop your neural networks. So if you get the stressors that can cause mental illness, life events, genetics, or what we call epigenetics, those can make some significant changes. But over time, when it's starting to develop, what happens is those old networks start to get weak and fade away, while the new altered networks start to arise and strengthen, become entrenched. Now you have a new predominant default way of thinking and responding to the world. So a lot of times mental illness causes problems with work. Again, if you're into computing or science or whatever it is, and the networks get messed up, all of a sudden it's hard to do your old job.
That can all happen by 14, huh?
For most of them, 14, and if you think about it, that's when the brain is really developing. So that's like a really good time for things to get screwed up while they're moving rapidly and getting started. And, also at teens, you're trying to process everything.
And hormones and all that stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. And then that can go on until about 25. And again, that's a lot of learning, development, figuring out who you are. You're probably getting maybe secondary or college education, getting into a job, whatever. By the time you get past 25, your life kind of starts to move along a steady course. So, looking at the change in neural networks a different way, this is areas of the brain that are activated during decision making. How you're going to behave, how you're going to talk, how you're going to view the world, or things that go on. In a normal, healthy brain, and you're all familiar with left brain, right brain division. In a normal, healthy brain, you've got your emotions and your analysis and executive functions are balanced. You also have this part of the frontal lobe, executive function and emotional control. They're also balanced, they're functioning roughly equal. Now we're going to look at depression. All of a sudden, you are overthinking everything and your emotions are just dull. And it drags you down because you're thinking, what's going on? Why is my life so miserable? Oh God, it's miserable, and you're out of control. If you look here, executive control and emotional control, both fading quite a bit. Here's a little bit of a different situation. If you're manic, look at that emotional side of the brain is going nuts. The logical, creative side of it is kind of shutting down. Really, you should go bonkers and manic with that. And look at the executive and emotional controls are both really down. So manic, like manic phases of things can be just, they can cause some really, really horrible problems for people in life. Also going to look at chemical imbalance. This is what a lot of people think cause mental illnesses. They don't. You get these old networks that are weakening and the new altered networks are arising. And as this neural change happens, that's when the chemical change happens. It follows the actual problem of neural networks. It's not the cause. Again, they result in the real cause, altered neural networks. They don't just make you think differently, they make the way that the brain fires and signals to itself change as well. Unfortunately, there's no way we can repair and rewire neural networks. And I shouldn't say no way, there's a little bit, but it's very, very difficult and tedious. So instead, what we end up doing is we treat the resulting chemical imbalances and just try to bring the signaling under control, despite the messed up networks. Here's some of the treatments that get used for them. They're treatable, but they are not curable. Something a lot of people with mental illnesses just can't get. So, you know, most of them though can function in daily life, as long as they keep things treated well. The other thing that helps is just a good plan for working with mental health professionals and organizing and, you know, making a plan for how to deal with the people in your life, how to talk to them, get them to work with you. The overall treatment plan can include medications as well as the talk therapy, group counseling. There are other things that can be done, activity, structures and such. And a combination of all of these things is almost always what you really need for good effect. And we're beginning to, as we begin to understand more and research about how the brain works, we get new improved medications and also the psychotherapy methods develop. And they get some that are more effective, but they also get a basket full of them and can figure out what's going to work best with any one patient. So the psychotherapy is much like the medical therapy. It's not, I'm going to give you one thing and her the same thing. I have to make it work out for the individual. And so, again, as our understanding of the brain increases, we're going to be better able to help and provide for people with mental illnesses. Something important, you can get your mental health restored to a great extent when you have a mental illness, but in order to keep it that way, you've got to keep up all the other aspects that go with it, your counseling or talk therapy, your medication, mindfulness, learning how to be aware of what's going on with you from moment to moment.
You said medication, but it says meditation up there. So which one
Sorry,
did you mean?
I learned to read. But yeah, okay, that's a part of it. I should, probably medication's in here too. But you gotta learn how to recognize when you're having signs of change or signs of your mental illness getting worse. And when you get impending trouble coming on, you learn tools and strategies to try to defuse it, back it down before they start to get really heavy and out of control. And lastly, most important, you gotta know when to get help. You can't always do this on your own. Know when to ask for help, know who to ask for help. And there's my medication. Stay on the damn things. I cannot believe how many people are, hey, I think I'm really good now. I'm gonna stop taking my meds. We're gonna see you back in here next month. Something about living with this stuff. That is what it can be like. Big, ugly monster. But you wake up every morning and you fight those same damn demons that made you so tired the night before. That is serious, serious toughness and bravery. They're living with it, they're underestimated in terms of their impact on the lives of not just patients, but their friends, their families, all of the society around them. And untreated mental illnesses, your emotional situation, how you behave, and physical health overall can suffer tremendously if you're not treating these things well. We all know what stress can do to you. That's something we're all familiar with. Any kind of change in your mental health, temporary or long-term, can screw up literally any part of your body or any system. Problems they get with all this when they develop, living with this, you're just not as happy with life. Your family, you get conflict with, and I'm letting it run now because the list is so long. But you can look through there and see everything that this can screw up in your life. It's basically impossible to, that's not even anywhere close to a comprehensive list. That's just a highlight right there. So everything in your life can be affected and screwed up in any number of ways. they're really badly misunderstood. This we're all kind of familiar with. As you go through here, you're gonna probably hear a lot of misunderstandings and prejudices that you've heard a lot of, and many of us have held them ourselves. So everyone is really familiar with physical problems like TBI, multiple sclerosis, all these things. We're familiar with it. We know what you can and can't do. They're physical illnesses, they can be treated, we know how. But the people who have them, you can't just say, you've got arthritis, stop hurting. Or, you've got heart trouble, let's go rock climbing. You recognize those limitations. Mental illnesses are much the same. They're also affecting a brain that's just like any other organ in that it screws up, just like your heart, your liver, anything else. Physical illness is one particular organ. And so when you've got this, a lot of people think, well, hey, just get your shit together. You're all bummed out. Life is good, cheer up. You can't, because you can't distinguish between perception and reality. Calm down, relax. I can't make healthy decisions because that's out of whack. And you can't do things like just ignore the damn voices. That's, but that's scary when people have that. So here's something about why they view them as different from other disorders. Again, you're going to recognize common prejudices. I said on the one hand, they're like any other mental disorder. It's a bodily organ. It malfunctions like anything else. But on the other hand, they're not like other disorders. Other disorders, they're familiar. We know what to do. If somebody has a stomach ulcer, you know what they need to be careful with. And if something serious happens, it's like, okay, we need to get them to a doctor. Maybe we need to call 911 if it's really critical. Everybody kind of knows what to do. You feel comfortable. Mental disorders, however, are strange. And they're so varied, it's even harder to keep track of them. And they're unpredictable. They do truly just fire off at random times, or what seem like random times. And if somebody has a mental disorder, you don't understand how it's going to manifest. It's scary when they have a severe episode, and you're standing there going, what do I do? If they had a heart attack, I'd just get him on an ambulance. But what do I do here? Because he's talking crazy. Do I tackle him? Do I call the cops? I don't know. Here's the different perspectives people get on it. You're going to see overlap here. The patient's afraid about how he's going to behave. Him getting isolated, losing his job. His self-image suffers badly. Family and friends are also afraid about how he's going to behave. They misunderstand these changes in behavior. They start to avoid the person. If they try to work with them, compassion fatigue, really common. And now, as they separate from the person feels stigmatized and ostracized. At work, people are afraid of what's going to happen. It can screw up your ability to do the work, and then they're going to react very negatively, and they don't understand that the reason you're having trouble with work is not because you've gotten lazy. It's because those neural networks have changed, and it's hard to think through what you knew before in the way you used to. And so you lose your job, get stigmatized. Society in general, they're afraid of how you're going to behave. They react negatively to it. They misunderstand why you're doing it. They ostracize you. Stigma arises again. Notice a very common word here, in red. But also notice everybody's afraid about what's going to happen. The patient himself and everybody else. Let's talk about that stigma a bit. What it is, it's actually a very complex construct. People sometimes think it's simple, we just don't like you. It's pretty complex, and it includes the factors of how the public views it, how the person views it, and there's so many just structural components that go to it that can all figure into the stigma. And it results in certain people being excluded from social acceptance. They start getting isolated, and so much more. So it directly affects people with mental illness. It also affects their support systems, provider networks, community resources. That's not a kind of community resource you normally reach out to. And a lot of people just sitting here in this room, what's the community resource for mental health problems? Some of us know, some of us have no clue. And then understanding stigma is really central to trying to reduce the negative impact on you. And this is where the real problem comes, is just understanding. But there are strategies being developed to counter effects of stigma. Programs that are out there that are really fruitful for getting the patients to engage in care. And then other aspects of getting rid of the negative impacts include increasing mental health knowledge and literacy on the matter. Get people to realize how culturally relevant these are, because they're a lot more common, as you saw earlier, than most people realize. Helping families to know how to engage and deal with things, because they do pull away so much. And then public campaigns to promote mental health care, let people know how to access it, and policy changes. In a minute, I'm going to talk about something in that's kind of surprising. So, the effect on seeking help, how it affects people. People are often ashamed of it, and they don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to say, "Hi, I'm schizophrenic." You know, because you're like, really? I'm not sure that's a topic we should be discussing. Go see somebody who knows what the hell's going on. People who have the problem don't seek out services or engage in them fully. So a lot of them aren't treated at all or aren't treated well. Continues to, the stigma makes them want to pull back and hide away even from help. Again, as greater awareness increases, you can help those who have mental illnesses get motivated to seek treatment. They also know where to find it. They get accommodations that help them to deal with normal life with a mental illness, just as having, if you need a cane to walk or a wheelchair to be in, there's certain accommodations that society is working to provide. And then as people know more about it, they stop stigmatizing them so often. They start welcoming people into their world who have mental illnesses. They become more empathic and sympathetic for you. Some of this is already happening. We're seeing it more commonly in society. Companion animals is probably one of the things that we're really seeing an increase in. It's amazing how good those animals can be and helping people to cope with the stress and unpleasantness of it. The animals center people, and animals respond to us. So it really helps, and it's like a friend who never judges you. Public problems, perception of danger. Here's one you're going to hear a lot of common sounds. Here in America in particular, they see people with mental health as a threat. You get all these highly publicized mass shootings and stuff, and people think it's because they're mentally ill. Or 60% of people think that people with schizophrenia are going to be dangerous. They're actually not too dang dangerous. They can be nutty, but they don't usually go out and do something really bad. 68% of them think alcohol dependence is going to make you super dangerous. It has its dangers, no question. You don't want them driving, and some people are angry drunks, but that's not everybody. And they're not nearly as dangerous as people often think. And even society being aware of it now helps to reduce that danger. Then you got the political rhetoric. Mental health, if they weren't so damn crazy, we wouldn't have all these mass shootings. Then that rhetoric gets stuck in the national psyche. And then people with mental illnesses become not just marginalized, but criminalized. That's the one that's kind of scary. And you wind up with views like this supporting laws that require people with mental illnesses or psychiatric symptoms must get treatment. We require it, whether you want it or not. Worst example of this I know, involuntary commitment. You just like, you're acting nuts, we're just gonna drag you out and throw you in a nut farm. That's, you know, it can happen. It's a great emergency way to deal with things if it really is critical, but it's not the solution every damn time. And again, it can help the people with mental illness, but sometimes they get pretty pissed about this, and then it makes things worse. Here's the reality about that danger. The FBI and other organizations, less than a quarter of people who attempt or commit these mass shootings fit any description of mental illness. In the past 30 years, this connection between violence and mental illness has just repeatedly been documented as weak at best. Here's another thing. People have all these red flag laws and stuff you hear about. Psychiatry can't identify who's going to be violent. Every time somebody goes out and does these mass shootings, they try to retroactively figure out how they could have dealt with it and then blame people for not having seen it, even though the psychiatrist couldn't see it. The price for this, stigma. You got mental health problems, we're afraid you're going to shoot us. Get the public stigma like that everybody thinks they're dangerous. The people who have mental health start to question themselves. Then you get the structural stigma of things being embedded in laws and institutions. National Institute of Mental Health, one of their top guys issued this statement. If we had a cure for serious mental illness that completely eliminated active psychotic or mood disorders, the problems of violence in the population would be reduced by 4%. It's insane. Keep using these words. But it's wrong, how's that? So here's how to really help people who have mental illness, instead of all that crap. On a societal level, greater education, greater awareness. We talked about that a bit earlier. People are afraid of things they don't know, things that are unfamiliar. You increase their awareness and understanding, they're not so afraid. They start to think, oh, I can approach this. Organizations that help promote mental health and are able to sort of reach out there and let people know, hey, here are the resources. Public events to promote learning. And those are kind of hard to do. We were talking about it, and they're a great idea, but they're hard to get going. Policy changes so you don't get punished for having a mental illness. Here's what I thought was nuts. In the 80s and 90s, up to about 20 states restricted voting, jury duty, elective office, parenting, and marriage rights because of mental illness. It's starting to sound like the days back when, black people couldn't get, have the same sort of problems. So here's our new minority to mistreat. So helping them support legal and educational efforts to improve the availability of treatment, the engagement with that treatment, employment opportunities. As I said, sometimes people lose their job because they can't do it as well. They need to find new things to do. And then societal views and attitudes. The more we can change that, the better all these other things are going to happen. And then increasing public visibility. Again, another thing that she and I were talking about earlier. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Ruth. She works at Mental Health Partners in Longmont. This awesome place. great resources for the public at large, for people who have mental illnesses to get help. People mostly don't know about it. And you can start just wearing t-shirts. Yeah, see, I was wearing this one today. Embrace neurodiversity. I deliberately picked this shirt out today. You can get bumper stickers, billboards, commercials, all sorts of things that can be put out there that'll just increase public visibility, give people a chance to go, oh, let's learn about this. How to help them on a personal level, one-on-one. Biggest thing, if somebody's got a problem with their mental health, especially if they're in some sort of an episode, just being there. You don't have to talk, you just listen. Sometimes you don't even do that, you both just sit there in silence. When they talk, just sympathize. Oh, that's hard, man, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm here for you. Don't try to fix them. Oh, this will backfire so badly. Don't try to fix them. Hey, come on, let's just go watch a movie. I don't want to watch a frickin' movie. And remember, they just can't suddenly be happy. They can't calm down. They can't stop being paranoid. They can't ignore the voices and hallucinations and stuff. You can't do that if this stuff is just wired wrong. So it's something we need to remember if you're going to help people who have mental health problems. And they can't just relax or get their shit together. Remember, it's an organic illness. So, like I said earlier, if you got asthma, just don't tell people to relax and breathe easy. Obviously you don't. If you have a heart condition, let's not go running. Arthritis. If you have mental illness, you can't just, hey, behave yourself. Be normal. What's your problem? Some other things on a personal level that can really help. Befriend a screwball. Find somebody who's, they're out there, they're all over the place. Find one and say, hey, I'm going to be their friend. And then you've got to stick with them. Compassion fatigue is going to come along. The temptation to go, this is just too freaking weird, too much trouble. If you're going to be their friend, you've got to stick with them, even when the shit is really hitting the fan. In fact, more than anywhere. And it isn't easy. Remember, just acting per screwed up neural networks. You gotta keep that in mind. So just sit with them, don't talk. Just sit. If they ask you to talk, if they want you to say something, okay, I'd keep it to a minimum. Again, I keep just saying, don't talk. I was gonna put STFU up there. Hugs are usually good, but not always. Kind of ask. It's like, could I give you a hug? Would that help? And they can say, yeah, it really would. Or they can say, yeah. Be respectful of their limitations and personal space and that. Looks things are going to get dangerous. You need to get help. Know what to do. You can call 911. If they're really just obviously way stressed out, it looks like it's going to be something really bad might happen. Yeah, you need to get some help. You can call 911. Better yet, just take them to the hospital yourself, because then they don't have to deal with the stress of ambulances and crap like that. If you call 911, for the love of God, tell the 911 operator to keep the goddamn cops away. If they won't, then when the cops show up, say, stay on that damn side of the street. And talk about why. If you call 911, no cops. If they're gonna insist, keep on the other side of the street. But we only want the paramedics. Got somebody with a mental health problem, we don't need a bunch of ham-handed guys with guns screwing it up and making it worse. Because they will fuck it up beyond all recognition. It's horrible.
Okay.
FUBAR, fucked up beyond all recognition. Remember, cops are just hammers. They're just brute force, and everything to them is a nail. Something to get down and handcuff it. lovely thing here. I'm gonna try to click on that and see if it'll work. If it does, see if I can do it this way.
I know now when I call my doctor's office and some other numbers, they say, if it's an emergency, do 911. If it's a mental health thing, they have a whole nother number that you're supposed to call. So a lot of
Yeah, what is that
phones are
number?
doing that. It's like a,
988.
What is it?
988.
988. So 911, try 988 instead. I really should have put that in here. This link is to a YouTube video. It won't go, so I'll tell you what happened. The man sitting there has severe autism. Somebody called the cops because they thought what he had there was, he was sitting there with a gun and waving it around. It's a toy truck. Holy crap. The man laying on the ground is his caretaker. He's there to help him. He comes up to deal with it. The cops are doing what cops do. Guns out, everybody on the ground, stop, you put that gun down. You mean the toy truck? He's standing, he's laying down like this because they said everybody down. He's got his hands up so he's not threatening. And he's telling the officers, I am a mental health counselor. This is my patient. That is a toy truck, not a gun. You know what the cops did? They finally walked up to it. They put the autistic guy down so they could cuff him. They got the counselor over there. This is incredible. He's sitting right there. The officers are coming up. One of them just had his gun and shot him in the leg. And the counselor there said, what'd you do that for? Cop's response, I don't know. What happened to the cop? Exonerated of all charges and he wants to go back to police work. Never let those guys in. They're just a disaster. So now, who are we? Anybody notice that sudden pronoun? We're your friends, your family, co-workers, the guy on the bus, entertainers, baristas at Starbucks, the guy who's doing this presentation right now. And where are we? Absolutely bloody everywhere. But really hard to see because we're trying to appear normal and blend in. That's another stressor. Let's look at some celebrities. It's amazing how many of them are doing their job and yet they're dealing with shit. Carrie Fisher, bipolar. Robin Williams, bipolar and addiction. Lady Gaga has PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Plus she's doing that. Ryan Reynolds has severe anxiety. That's a fight for him to do his job. Here's some others. Beach Boy, schizophrenic. He manages to keep that under control for performances. David Beckham, the soccer player, has dependent personality disorder. That means he has a lot of trouble just dealing with people and he wants this praise all the time. If he doesn't get it, he feels wrong because he's depending on other people for his identity. He's one of the greatest soccer players in the world. Everybody loves him.
is that part of obsessive compulsive then?
That,
Super
yeah.
soccer player?
A lot of really, really top people are perfectionists. See, OCD does happen with them. Roseanne Barr, dissociative identity disorder, more commonly known as multiple personality disorder. I read a bit about this. She had up to 8 personalities, and she had to subvert them all in order to do her acting job. And I think her acting training might have helped because then she was used to putting on new personalities. But she talked a bit about how hard it was to deal with that. Adam Levine, I absolutely love Adam Levine. With all he has to do, remembering all his songs and stuff, ADHD. That's kind of hard. He has trouble focusing on things. So in this, I'm going to end with Robin Williams, who deals with this stuff, who said, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be kind, always. That's it. Got any Q&A now?
Thank you, Mike.
And by the way, as I said, I'm a nut. She works at Mental Health Partners, so you've got some pretty good insight here if you ask questions.
So electroshock therapy was big in the 50s, right? Or prior to that?
Yeah,
Was that whole theory about trying to rewire these networks? Or did they even have a theory?
I think it was more like, get your shit together, or we'll zap your
Or we're gonna
ass.
hurt you?
Yeah, that's kind of, it's really not much different than, get your shit together, I'm gonna hammer on your hand here. Doesn't work. I
My mom
think,
had to do that, and I noticed that there was something on the TV recently that was promoting that, so it's still out there and being done. It's not helping rewire the brain or
It's helping
something?
rewire the brain in some ways.
Yes.
It can be effective for treatment-resistant depression, bipolar, other
Yep.
conditions, so it's more of a last resort.
Electroshock therapy. They don't call it that anymore, probably. They've got a more sophisticated.
Electroconvulsive therapy.
Convulsive, that's
yeah,
another
you
word.
sounds
That sounds
worse.
Well, but they no longer have the convulsions because they'll give a muscle relaxant at the same time, so.
It actually is what you said. It's also an element of trying to get those networks to sort of reorganize in what's hopefully a better way. And that shock is like, not so much that you want to hurt somebody, but that sudden bam like that.
It's actually the seizure that happens afterwards causes this mass depolarization and maybe rebooting.
Yep. And that's also a little bit dicey too, because you have the seizure, could go the wrong way. That's why it's very limited in its applications. You probably would know more about that than I would. I don't
I
know.
would say it used to be the hammer,
Yes.
the big hammer, because they didn't know what else to do. Now it's used in very specific situations, like people for whom everything else has failed, and it's much more refined and it's much more specific about which areas of the brain you do. And I would say it's a much more targeted and useful tool when everything else doesn't work, but we have to be really careful.
Yeah, very good. So that, you talked about, ways that it can work or potentially backfire sometimes. That's why it's so limited, which is good.
The other thing is, this country used to incarcerate mentally ill people, did they not? I don't know what-
Institutionalized.
Institutionalized, yeah.
Yep.
And then that disintegrated, I don't know exactly when or whatever, what time period, the last 20, 30 years or something.
More than that.
It's still big time. That's one of Judy Almabale's main things that she's working on, is getting mentally ill people into mentally ill institutions rather than incarcerating them for months or years waiting to get them out.
Or letting them become homeless.
Or letting them become homeless or any of those things, yeah.
Yep.
So it's still happening big time.
Yeah, and mental illnesses are a heavy cause of homelessness. So, again, social structure, policy changes, that can make a huge difference. At least like those 20 states that actually wouldn't let you get married and stuff. That's at least, that's pretty much been done away with. But, I mean, this is only the 80s and 90s. Most of us in this room, all of us, I'm pretty sure were alive then. For some of us, that was like me. Hey, that was a prime of life. I was having a great time.
You mentioned a concern with involuntary commitment, and my understanding is that involuntary treatment was a problem up until about 1960, and then the ethics of the mental health field evolved, and autonomy is now considered autonomy of the patient, right to make their own decisions, is considered very, very important central value for psychotherapists. So the bar for involuntary commitment these days, I think, is pretty high, that either the person is threatening or likely to hurt themselves or others, or basically is so, for lack of a better word, deranged that they can't take care of themselves.
Yep.
But you think there's still a problem with?
It's, you said the bar is high, and it's kind of like, yeah, theoretically, but how does it get applied by different individuals? professional psychologist, he's probably gonna be pretty careful about it and good at analyzing it. A cop, he doesn't even know what he's doing. Those guys really need mental health education. And, you know, again, whatever doctor, whatever is in the hospital, they may or may not be really good at keeping that bar high. Normally, nowadays, if you go into like the emergency room or something like that, they do have a psychiatrist or psychologist somewhere that they can get in there in a hurry and let them deal with it. They can make a good assessment. John, do you have some experience with it? You seem to have some good insight.
I'm a licensed professional counselor,
Okay.
Some experience, yeah.
LCSW or
LCP, LPC.
LPC? Okay. I used like he was being too insightful.
All right, well, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So, appreciate it. I'm glad to do it.